Hello yet again, and we are discussing funding, or rather, I shall produce an unprepared, perhaps ill-prepared monologue on funding. F-U-N-D, that's the real four-letter F word that is makes or breaks anyone or anything, any sort of enterprise. I imagine across time and space, it's almost genetic, it's anatomical. Uh, Anything without funding collapses or unravels or doesn't realize what it set out to do. If I want to discover the truth somehow, I need funding. And then I've prepared everything in written form, perhaps a visual form, but before I make it public, make it known and disseminate it and spread it around, those who provided me with the funding will tell me, remove this or edit that or add this, please. And then it's not exactly what I wanted to show the world. Since I don't fund myself 9 times out of 10, then my hands are tied. And it's a very strange catch-22, chicken or the egg. Funding is ultimate, funding is pivotal, funding is decisive, be that an academic adventure, an investigative adventure, a purely capitalistic enterprise that seeks to sell a given commodity as much as possible, maximize the profit. Funding and how to raise funding. Of course, there are many platforms today where people can fund themselves by approaching their laptop and clicking a few buttons. A lot of respect and awe to those behind this, the algorithms and softwares and so on. I'm using these terms very loosely, for I'm not very advanced in mathematics, and I know virtually nothing about software, hardware, computing, programming, and so on and so forth. But it's been no less than 35, 40 years in the making, I dare say more. So a good 2 generations of humans have gone into it, and we use these platforms that are apparently quite free. We pay for the electricity, we pay for the internet connection, and so on and so forth. But rather remarkable, if not surreal. Very fond of science fiction, and here we are, science fiction in effect. But not to digress too much, which I tend to do. Apologies indeed. Funding is everything, and whether it's academic and you have to publish or perish, but there's funding, and there are certain red lines, sometimes involved or rather implemented by the person themselves. They call them self-censorship. Sometimes right before publishing, you must modify your material, whether it's written, whether it's visual, or it's otherwise, or a combination of both. And it boils down to funding, unfortunately. So perhaps it's best to be fully aware of this from the get-go, from the first moment, as long as one is not fully self-funding a given project or enterprise. But this, perhaps this magic F word renders all polemics, debates and diatribes and apologetics somewhat mute, somewhat redundant, because if there's no funding, nothing happens. If I cannot pay the electricity bill and the bill for this wireless internet connection and for this rented home I'm speaking from, I live within, then. So, unfortunately, money talks and virtually everything else seems to walk. Funding it is, and let's hope for as much funding as possible. After all, this is what I've written here in the description for this particular video and similar videos I've recently uploaded, that the main aim here, or at least consciously, for the time being, the main aim, the only aim is tangible, material gain, a form of funding, perhaps, because I'm not overjoyed to be repeating these words that I have been saying in many languages for over 20 years. It becomes dull when you repeat more or less the same ideas and convictions over time. In my case, it becomes rather dull, I must say, rather boring. I like to believe I'm not in love with my voice nor my ideas. However, that brings us to the ego, and perhaps that's another video. Thank you. Have a good day.